edition of Night Shift. I'm Eric Lopez alongside Kyle Nash. He's back, folks. He's back. We're going to talk UCF football. Consider this your basically 2025 wrap-up show for UCF football. We're going to go what went right, what went wrong, what needs to be addressed. And we are going to be the psychiatrist, perhaps, to Scott Frost. Maybe Kyle could be his psychiatrist after Scott Frost is I don't want to call it a meltdown, but basically going off and saying the system is broken on his signing class day. That's an odd time to break down the system. We'll break it all down on this edition of Night Shift. Welcome back, Kyle.
Hey, great to be in, Eric Lopez. And listen, I enjoy this concept of the thumbs up or thumbs down. I have heard there are more muscles and bones used in lifting your thumb up, so your wrist should avoid any risk of injury, I'm sure, in this particular evaluation.
That's correct. All right, of course, you can follow us at blackandgoldbanneret.com for all the latest in UCF. Basketball's playing well, so there's that. Also, of course...
But fire Johnny, right, Eric? Anyway.
Yeah. He figures out a way to put a roster together every year. YouTube channel, subscribe to the YouTube channel. A lot of post-game pressers from all the UCF sports are up there as well. And then follow us on all the social media platforms for Night Shift and Black and Gold Banneret. But let's not waste any more time, Kyle. We haven't spoken in weeks. Seems like an eternity. The UCF season not officially over. Technically, if a few teams turn down bowl invites, UCF might get an invite. I don't know how optimistic we are about that happening, but who cares? UCF 5-7 on the season, of course, losing to BYU 41-21 in a game where they jumped out to a 14-0 lead, and then BYU woke up and realized, all right, let's get serious now, and decided to outscore them 41-7 the rest of the way in that ball game, in a game where the defense kind of maybe played their worst game of the year. Of course, they ended up, it's easy to say when you're going up against what turned out to be the Big 12 Player of the Year, and L.J. Martin, the running back for BYU, CFCF. Nonetheless, things have happened a lot since. We're not going to dive into that game because, let's be honest, folks, we've dove into enough losses.
And for goodness sake, check out Stevie B's content there, blackandgoldbanneret.com.
Let's get into this whole season. Obviously, some news this week. Tajan Jackson, that turns out was his finale for UCF. He is entering the portal, as is Jakari Brown entering the portal. This is as we're recording this on Friday, early Friday, folks. So this is constantly going to change, even though the portal doesn't officially open until the first week of January on that. Wayton Charles. And, Kyle, times have changed when Wayton Charles has announced he's coming back. And I'm like, well, thanks. But that was important.
We've heard about this, right? The real recruiting now isn't getting players from the outside; it's keeping them in the building, right? I think that was Oregon's coach that said that, right? Like
retain, yeah.
Yeah, that's the true thing. And by the way, anybody who was wondering why Lane Kiffin wasn't allowed to coach or won't be allowed to coach Ole Miss in the playoff, that would be why. Is that same recruiting concept? I'll leave it at that.
We'll get into that. Maybe we'll get into that later when we talk about the Big 12 title game and all that. But Kyle, your thoughts? UCF now 5-7. Do you want to start with the roster news of the week, or do you want to go? I guess we could start with that. Your reaction to those moves first.
I mean, listen, overall, I think they hit a lot of things that were necessary. And I know the thing you were pounding the table for, and rightly so. And I'm not putting you out on an island saying that. I said the same thing, right? The quarterback classes are changing. That's the expectation. Did we necessarily expect Tajan Jackson to hit the portal? No, but he is. And I think it's probably because he was more politely said, so listen, guys, you too, Jakari, we're going to get some other people in, and you can stay here and fight if you'd like, but your chances of playing are probably somewhere between slim, none, and then Bishop Bullwinkle, hail to the no, right? So with that, you may want to transfer. So I think that's the elements where that take place. I like that. I like seeing how the defensive elements were bolstered, right? We got DBs in here. We got D linemen coming in. I would have perhaps liked to see maybe, and granted, it's still early. Winter is coming. More guys could get involved. But, personally, I would like to have seen perhaps a little more offensive line movement. I know they got Charlton in, and that's cool. This linebacker core is getting turned over. That was kind of expected, considering how many, shall we say, aged linebackers there were. But seeing two linemen being added to the fold as well, with Bo Charlton and is it yeah, it's Amon Williams. I couldn't remember his first name. So yeah, these are elements that I like to see early of things getting off the ground. Simply put, some of the changes that need to be addressed are getting hit early.
Quarterback position, we knew it. I think by the end, it was no surprise Jackson wasn't going to come back. More than likely, in this day and age, Kyle, we've discussed this.
Mm-hmm.
You can't commit to a lot of money to multiple quarterbacks. It just doesn't. Not at least not here anyway. Maybe in Lubbock you can, but not. That was the name of the game. Where Jackson. And again, people don't realize this, but Jackson, from what I've been told, been compensated way more than KJ Jefferson was. So it wasn't. I think there's this perception that Jackson was like a freebie, and it's not the case. So obviously that's going to be a position they're going to have to address, and they are going to have to address. But the thing is, that is the most expensive position as far as the transfer portal is concerned. Max Olson wrote about this for ESPN back in August. The average starting quarterback. Look at that, giving love to Max Olson. The average starting quarterback is anywhere between 1 to 3 million. Kyle.
Yeah, and that must be a power conference number, right? I mean,
there's been speculative reports this week that Sorsby, the Cincinnati quarterback, is asking for around 3 to 4 million to stay. Otherwise, nuts. He might bolt. But that's the market, Kyle, because people are desperate for quarterbacks, and so it's kind of like the NFL model, basically. More and more every day, college football is turning into the NFL, where there's NFL guys, and you and I have argued about this in the past, where about certain quarterbacks that get big extensions or sign big contracts, i.e. Kirk Cousins, you're like, is he that good? It's not that he's not. It's not that an issue about whether is he good or not. It's just we need a quarterback in that position, and sometimes teams are willing to overpay for that. Some might argue UCF has done that 2 years in a row. Nonetheless, Kyle, that's where they're at, and it's going to be interesting to see how Scott Frost and company handle that. Of course, they do have freshman quarterback in Rocco Marriott coming in this signing class that was announced on Wednesday. By the way, that is right there, self-made NIL opportunities right there. That should be an easy spot deal. But Kyle, that's where UCF is at right now, and to me, I don't know. I think we'll probably end up disagreeing on this. That's why I think this season was a disappointment for multiple reasons. Number one, you didn't get into a bowl game, which I think we thought was very feasible. You kind of wasted a heck of a year from the defense, which was, if you look at all the numbers, top 25, top 30 good defensively. Arguably the best defense this decade UCF has had. You also wasted a good special teams year. A kicker who had a great year was a Lou Groza semifinalist. I think your punt return was good. 2/3 of your team was actually improved and pretty good. If you have an average offense, I think you're a bowl team. But you were not average. You were below average most of the time. There's reasons for that. I get that. But at the end of the day, that's the head coach, that's his side of the ball. And not able to figure that out, especially at the end of the year. For example, the Baylor game, where everybody scored on Baylor this year, except UCF, was perplexing to me. So to me, you're the grades guy. So I'm going to be curious your rebuttal on this. To me, it's a disappointing season because of that. Your thoughts?
There's a few things that were both encouraging and disappointing. And listen, I'm not normally an on-the-fence guy, man. You leave a lot to unpack with all those statements you made, by the way, my friend. I'm going to lead with this. I will take the alleged $700,000 that UCF paid Taven Jackson over the alleged $300,000 that KJ Jefferson wrought. Why? Because at that time it represented a larger percentage of a pie at that point than does Taven's thing, as they're about to get into that Big 12 money. And you could argue about the timing of it and how legit that is. That's fine. I'm just telling you my opinion on it with that in mind, right? So there's that element too. At least Taven Jackson played a lot more games or seemed more involved than KJ Jefferson did theretofore, right? So we'll leave that at that. Another thing I would add, the bowl game miss is disappointing, especially considering the fact that they're a single throw at the end of the Houston game away from making that bowl game, right? Which is why I think I'm so on the fence with a lot of this, is they were literally that close in a world where, and I know your response is going to be everybody gets injured. It was extra with UCF. Let's be clear about that. How many teams lose two starting quarterbacks in a season? Not really a thing, right? And the fact that they were that close to a bowl game when the college football calendar was not in favor of Scott Frost last year because he came in so late. This defense doing what it did with Gross, you mentioned Pete Alomar and the special teams, that's damn sure encouraging. And listen, for all the times Bryson Turner here on the Night Shift podcast talked about the way the Malzahn regime kind of put special teams off to the side, giving it to a coach that split duties with both tight end and special teams, Blackburn, I think he was. This shows a noted improvement, right? And I have to say this again because it's a requirement. Apparently, they're only 1 year removed from the 2016 UCF offense to which I, and even Scott Frost himself, compared this football team. Eric, you say they improved 2 parts of the ball of 3. That's true. I could even add a little bit more in that they improved 2.5 parts of the ball because I liked the receiver core for the most part. Dylan Wade has come in at the tight end position, became a presence. Maybe that's because it was a quarterback that needed check down help or something like that. I have no idea. And this O-line, I know, got the brunt of the blame, but when they were fighting in a lot of situations, they weren't really the biggest problem. But Kyle, at the end of that one game, Cam Facher almost scored, and that O-line and all that, he couldn't get a yard. On the goal line, it was 2 tight ends tripping over each other that killed that play for anybody else. Now, could they have done better? Yes. Am I prepared to say that Scott Frost is entirely to blame for all of the collapse? No, I'm not. I'm not there yet. And this offseason is really going to be, my opinion, decides what kind of recruiter he is perceived to be moving forward in this new space.
Well, he's not off to a great start, if depending on what your favorite recruiting site is. We'll just leave it as that.
Right.
UCF's classes are ranked around the 70s and 80s. And I understand people are going to say, who cares? It's, it's unpredictable.
Well, it's not even the season 4 recruiting has just started as well. The portal.
Correct. It's early. Yeah. The portal. But the thing I have concerned, Kyle,
go ahead,
from a UCF standpoint, there's really only multiple ways you could be successful. Recruit, have high top-notch recruiting classes, develop your players, right? Or if you can't do that, you go into the portal and grab a good chunk of those talented players and fit them in, or maybe a combination. The ultimate perfect scenario would be if you balance a little bit of both into that. I just don't know if UCF has that ability right now. You've addressed their financial resources lacking of there, and we heard Scott Frost complain, address it in his press conference on signing day, where it went viral, Kyle. It went viral, where he talked about the system is, quote, broken. And he got a lot of negative feedback nationally and from the fan base talking about, oh, here we go. He's complaining again. Whether it's accurate or not, Kyle, and I know you're going to say it's accurate, and it is. I agree with everything Scott Frost said about it. The system is broken. Here's the problem, Kyle. It ain't going back. It's not going back.
I don't think he's asking for that. Let's start with that, please. Listen, Eric, this is how good national media and all these entities can be, and how powerful going viral can be. Lopez, we've heard these kinds of statements from him already, right? I asked him, going back, I think it was his second availability in 2.0 of him being a UCF Knight, I said, hey, Coach, how did life in the NFL kind of prepare you for dealing the current state of NIL? His response was something, and I'm paraphrasing, because it's far enough back I don't remember, right? I'm paraphrasing when he said something along the lines of, at least in the NFL, you have contracts, right?
Sure.
Now, obviously, NIL in college world has some contracts out there, but I think his point is more that the NFL's the life of a player in the NFL is far more defined than we have in college and IL. Better or not, he has griped about this being broken. And by the way, he's not the first to mention college football being broken because the schedule sucks too. I mean, how much? The only reason why Lane Kiffin is a headline, beyond Lane Kiffin himself, I might add, right? The only reason Lane Kiffin is a headline in the first place, or this time of year, whenever any coach changes, right? Rich Rod, Brian Kelly, whoever it is, granted, Brian Kelly wasn't this past year, but you get it, is because the calendar's so screwed up, right?
Everybody, Kyle, everybody knows that. You don't need to be repeating that. And I just thought the timing of bringing that up, I don't think was ideal. That's not what your fan base was looking for. Not after the season just ended. You went 5-7, a signing class that's not that exciting. I think people are like, really? We're going to go over it? Because here's the bottom line. No matter what you think of the resources, we could do the same statement 6 months from now, a year from now. It's not going to change the fact that you got to put up results if you're Coach Frost in UCF. You still have to figure out a way to win. That's the issue.
I think we're kind of moving away from the point I was trying to make.
Sure.
He's making that statement just the same way. It's funny UCF fans are getting mad at him because he was doing the same kind of thing, trying to campaign UCF into the playoff in 1.0 of Scott Frost. But he does something again to promote change for college football for the better, and now you're going to gripe at him. Ignorant.
But here's the difference. He had clout back then. He has no clout right now.
He has no clout. No, I would completely disagree.
He had clout. He had clout from the standpoint he had an undefeated team. So he was talking, and I would argue he didn't talk. He probably talked too late. But even if you want to say he didn't have clout back then, that's fine. He definitely doesn't have it right now. Right now, he's a coach that's had one winning season in his coaching career as a head coach, which was 2017. And I think people are like, can we focus on that first? Can we just because I think that's what the frustrating thing is. It's not like they set the bar high this year. It's like, can we just have a winning season? I do think that would have helped for a bowl game, but more so, it kind of officially closes the door at his previous place. The media can officially let that go. Instead, it's another season of Scott Frost with a losing record, so that still kind of hovers. Plus, I think that would have changed the mood of momentum a little bit. I do believe in that, especially. People could get excited. Hey, we won 6-7 games. The other thing that was disappointing, if Jackson would have worked out, hey, we've got a quarterback. Instead, it's almost like you're starting over again on the offensive side of the ball, because really outside of a Dylan Wade who is coming back and a Charles, I don't know if the fan base is excited about anybody else on the offensive side. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's how it feels, Kyle. Whether you think it's right or wrong, that's how it feels.
But that's very interesting because all the points you made, correct in all their glory, Eric Lopez. You have landed my plane with great precision. Him saying college football doesn't mean jack. It's just something for people to complain about because there's no football going on. And that's why people are disappointed in Night Nation, because there's no more football going on.
Well, there's frustration. And there's frustration how the year played out, right? Like, that was, let's be honest, Kyle, that was not easy on the eyes from time to time watching that team play.
Sure. And listen, there were plenty of times, to your point, where UCF, even the offense, did have brighter moments but couldn't land the plane, right? The argument could be made they should have won the Houston game. The argument could be made that Cincinnati had its opportunities, but then they penalized themselves out of competition, right? So,
well, the thing is, I mean, the irony is the quarterback that threw the most important pass of the year, you could argue, was Davi Belfort in that Houston game.
That's absolutely correct, Eric. There's no middle ground.
That tells you all you need to know how messed up the situation is. Let me ask you this, because I've asked a bunch of people this that's tried to argue with me on this, and I'm curious if you have an answer on this, because they didn't give me an answer either.
I will certainly try, my friend.
What's the most memorable thing about this season that you'll look back 5 years like, oh, I remember that. Oh, I remember that game or that whatever, because I don't. I personally think this was not a memorable season. I think it's a forgettable season. I will, like, if you told me, hey, you could DVR this season, you could go back to it. I'm like, no, thanks. I'll delete it. Clear space. I'd rather record other programming. That's my opinion. What say you?
You're saying, and first of all, I'm assuming you mean positive highlights, right?
Yeah, not negatives. Nobody wants to go back and see negatives.
The most memorable things, in my opinion, are Cam Fancher getting knocked out and the Davy Belfort interception in the end zone, right?
Agreed. By the way, I agree with you 100%. I agree. That's if you force me, if you said, okay, just forget positive, negative, what's the most memorable? That's it. It's that Davy Belfort throw and being picked off is going to never, and the fact that he came in the game when he did was wild. That's it. But that's not a positive.
Whether you like it or not, which I know you don't, and I've said publicly I do, I haven't strayed from that. Your use of the word wild, still thoroughly accurate for both accounts. But that being said, I think then, and this is going to be negative, air quotes, but this is the highlight. Taven Jackson taking the job in that Jacksonville State winning throw at the end of the game to Black in the end zone. To me, that was the high point. And boy, talk about thinking too soon, right? And let's be honest. I know some fans out there, right or not, could see the highlight being beating and further exposing Bill Belichick. And
people had a good time with that. Some people had a good time with that. Yeah, but they're 4-8, to your point. Actually, you know what the irony is? You can make a case. Jacksonville State turns out was the best team you beat all year. They ended up in the CUSA championship game.
Quite possible.
But that kind of proves my point why this season was not a successful one. And I know some people are trying to are you one that are you in this, hey, it's year 0, he should get a pass? And again, let me emphasize this. I'm not saying that anybody should be on the hot seat or anything like that, but I'm not a believer that any coach should get a pass for anything, but except, in fact, I've been defending the offensive line. The only group that deserves a pass is the offensive line because their offensive line coach unfortunately passed away. That's, to me, that's why I agree with you. And I feel like the people that just criticize and say, oh, the offensive line is the issue, I think is a lazy take because there's more issues than just the offensive line, quote unquote. In fact, I think every position on offense has issues. The running back position was a big disappointment.
There was a lot of injuries. That's why it had issues.
But that's part of the game. That's part of the game. Like we go into next year, I have no idea what to expect from the running back situation. There's questions still about the receivers, how good it is as a whole. So there's a lot of questions there. But that's why, no, I don't think any coach should get a pass per se. Because again, I think a couple things you do differently, and hopefully Scott learns from it. You could have had a bowl season. So no, I don't think it's a pass.
Well, I'm going to need you to define giving him a pass, right?
Where he is evolved. He does not get any criticism of anything. Like he can do no wrong.
What? Yeah. Okay. So no coach is removed from criticism.
No, and that's my point. Right.
Yeah. See, this is what's interesting, and I'm not saying you're doing this on purpose, but like the premise such that it is kind of tiptoeing and what's his word, kind of canceling itself out, right? You don't want a first-year coach to be fired, but yet you like there's no room. It's either one or the other. Like if getting a pass means he shouldn't get fired, well, he wasn't going to anyway, right? You know
at the end of the day, he's responsible for the roster, and if the roster has holes and flaws, he has to be questioned on that. And I know people are making excuses. Well, he came in late and this and that. Listen, welcome to the new world of college athletics.
Where you come in late. This question. Hear me out on this. Let me pose you this question, and I think this is the best way to kind of give you the answer you're looking for, right? All the stuff you mentioned that aren't just excuses, they're reasons, in my opinion, but he's still held responsible. Do you think Scott Frost holds him self-responsible too? I think the answer is hell yes, right?
I hope so. Yeah.
Good. Okay, I'll take that. But yeah, in my opinion,
that's a very good question to ask too. Like when we see him in the spring, like, hey, what did you take from last year? Did you self-reflect?
I'm sure we're going to hear all about that.
I'd like to hear that. Yeah.
I would imagine he's going to lead with that when we start getting availabilities. All
right, and that's why I want to have you on. You're the grades guy. Yeah. Every week you have grades, so I'm going to ask you right now, what grade do you give Scott Frost this year?
Because he missed a bowl game. He can't get higher than a C because he missed a bowl game, right? Because that was my expectation for it.
Agreed.
He got so bleeding close, though. Like, let's be honest. If that ball by Davy Belfort comes out a second earlier and that touchdown happens, not only is there a bold game, we're lauding Scott Frost as a big genius for pulling the move off in the first place. And you would still be critical of it because you are a consistent human being in a lot of ways. And I would give you that credit to still criticize it, just like I'm holding pat and still saying I like the move. It just ended, unfortunately, right? All of that would have him a god, right? So that's why I'm not penalizing him quite as harshly as you or some others. And you're right. You have your right to do that. This is what makes horse races. Where I'm going to have him is probably close to a C, maybe even a C minus. And a lot of the injuries, I know, football and injuries, part of the game, blah, blah, blah. Again, the absolute sheer volume of injuries that this group experienced in key places. At one point, both their starting defensive ends, for example, were compromised. Goodness gracious, great balls of fire, right? With all that going in, I can't give him below a C minus either. I'm going to say a C. And I think what puts it over the edge to keep me out of the minus is, again, the late nature of his being brought in. And listen, credit to Kenny Martin and Terry Mahajer for doing what they did to keep recruiting efforts afloat as best they could until Frost got here. But for me, I'm going to call it a C right now because everything was that close to being a B minus or higher, right?
We're in agreement, actually. That's the same grade I would give him. I actually agree with you. No, I'm glad. And again, I'm not suggesting, like, to me, a D and F would be grounds for, like, oh, you're on the hot, like, my goodness. You're like, he did there's a lot of positives. I like some of his play calling.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of positives. I didn't like how he handled that Davy Belfort situation. I mean, I don't even know if Davy Belfort threw another pass the rest of the year. So, yeah. I mean, and again, I understand he came in December and all that, and he was, he picked the roster, and that's welcome to the new land. By the way, you know who doesn't complain ever? Who has probably a bigger gripe? Johnny Dawkins.
That's fair.
Am I right? You've been to some of the Johnny. Have you ever heard Johnny complain about the system's broken?
He acknowledged this as a challenge, but he never used the word broken. I will grant.
And yet he finds a way to pick a roster out that's good enough to compete. That's all my point is. But I agree with you. I actually think I agree with you. We're on the same page. See, that's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying.
That gets a bell.
Thank you. I just enjoy talking to smart people about football for a change. All right, we'll go quick on this. Give me your grade offense.
Well, you mentioned Dawkins. You're talking about Frost's offense.
Yes, yeah, UCF offense this year.
And here's the thing: so much of it is dependent on the quarterback. That's a high weight on that position. So I could look foolish here when I say I'm going to say D plus on that, just because it got that predictable by the end of the year.
Yeah, I won't disagree with that either. We're 2 for 2 in agreement. All right.
Hey.
Defense.
A, and I can see an argument for an A plus. Like, just absolutely awesome
stuff. Alex Grinch, home run, right? That's the highlight of the year was Alex Grinch's hire. That's why I'm saying, like, Frost, again, I don't want to make it sound like he did like a bad job. It's not that he did a bad job. There's just things he could have done better. But, man, give him credit because a lot of people were critical of him when he hired Grinch. They better eat some crow.
I had my questions. I just wasn't sure.
By the way, they picked out some good defensive players, too, from the portal.
Absolutely.
So, so it's not like that we're handcuffed there either. Now, granted, you could argue they had more established talent back, in particular in the defensive line that probably helped. But they still, like, getting Cole Kozlowski, linebacker, was incredible. Incredible. Move, among others. Dunham is another one. So that's why I don't buy the reason, he was too late in the process for the offense. Well, then how were they able to get good defensive players? Now, you could argue.
Just made the point, though. They had a lot more established already.
In the defensive line, but they still, it didn't stop them from getting a Cole Kozlowski. But you're right. The offense had more holes.
And the line is more important first on either side of the ball, Eric Lopez. When you have NFL training camp roster caliber dudes regularly on your defensive tackle core, and you lose one because he got bought, and Horace Lockett comes in and replaces until he gets hurt, and then RJ comes in and he does a great job, and no matter how many people are missing, this D tackle core is still throwing dudes all over the house. That matters.
Yeah. No, we agree. Special teams, great.
A+, unequivocally. Good God. Noah Ruelas is the story we're not talking enough about.
Let's not forget Jackson punt returning, too. I thought he was a pretty good punt returner. In the Houston game, too, helped him out. Yeah, but I agree with you about I do agree about your kicking game, though. I agree.
Sure. And we're talking about a guy that made program history with the amount of kicks he made over 50 yards. Listen, I know, Matt Wright's a cool guy. I like him. I think he's a good kicker. Did not kick that much compared to Ruelas from that distance, right?
Are you making the case that he's a little better than Matt Wright? Are you making that suggestion?
I'm saying that's worth an exploration should his UCF career continue thus. I'm saying.
As long as you say he's better than Matt Prater, I could get into that. All right. Yeah, I would say A. What did you think of the kick return?
The kick return actually got some touchdowns. Let me tell you why it's an A and why the kick return needs to be given its credit. Because last year, you even remember Malzahn uttering the words, "just so long as they don't hurt us." But the kick return actually contributed points and offense. Something that had not happened since, the previous Frost era, one could argue. Maybe you had some good returning in the Heupel years. But yeah, man, ever since it was bad enough when Xavier Townsend left, and it was then mediocre at this point and disappointing. They made it viable this season, Pete Alomar and company. Just saying.
All right. I was going to go B, but I can listen to an A. Maybe a low A. Low A?
A-. I'll meet you there.
All right. There you go. All right. See? Same page. All right. Other than quarterback, what's a position you're looking forward to seeing how UCF addresses it that you think needs to be addressed? Either side of the ball. Any side of the ball.
Defensive ends.
Okay.
Defensive ends. And I know people are like, well, what about the running back? UCF has a tradition of good running backs. I'm going to rely on their recruitment. And also running backs by comparison are a dime a dozen. I'm sorry, I said it. Deal with it. Receivers, we are analyzing a team that's so low down in the order. Again, we're going to have to go with that receiving concept of the dime a dozen, fits a role and does his job, because elite receivers are expensive, right? Defensive ends, Eric, you and I both participated in the exercise of the top 20 or the first 25 of the millennium, 25 years team for UCF. The weakest spot then was defensive end. And now that Malachi Lawrence and Nigel Kelly are aged the way they are, it's a weakness still and again, right?
Congrats to Lawrence, by the way, first team bulk Big 12.
Absolutely. Yeah.
To back up your point.
Yeah. So all of the above, I need to see what they're doing with that, and I need to see it quickly. Obviously, some movement in recruitment already for some of that. That's a good thing. But yeah, if I'm most curious what they do, it's there. Yes, even over the offensive line.
Well, I think the offensive line, it's got to start with the offensive line coach hire.
Correct.
And I think, do you believe, are you one that feels like you're hoping, not that it's a requirement, maybe the next offensive line coach hire, bring offensive linemen with him, just like the guy that was here previously, Herb Hand, took a couple guys with him to FSU, right?
Yeah,
that's something that people have brought up. That one thing that didn't help Frost was a lot of his hires. Normally when you make hires on your staff, sometimes they'll bring players with you. That's the new game today, right?
Right.
That wasn't really the case with this staff. Maybe with the next offensive line hire, not that that's a requirement, but again, hope maybe that person brings a couple linemen with them who knows the system, and then automatically helps your offensive line.
And to your point, with Scott having missed, here's where I think that the pass thing applies too, right? You got to look at this as Scott Frost is hiring to prevent his firing, right? Because that pass ain't going to be given if he goes 2 years without a bowl game. I think we're going to start having.
It's a microwave. It's a microwave sport now.
Correct.
We're in a microwave era, because what the portal has done, it has sped up the process. It used to be that you could build a team and you would get 4 recruiting classes to build it. That's ancient now, for the most part.
And it's turtle slow.
Maybe because it really is. Because even if you're at a mid-major, if you're not in a power conference, the problem is you can develop these guys and then they're going to bolt for the cash to go a bigger conference. So I think you're right in that you look into next year, they have to make a bowl next year.
Yeah.
You have to make a bowl. Otherwise, you start becoming apathy is the word that starts popping up. And that's
Correct.
not a word. That I rather, people get mad. Well, the fan base gets mad and upset. I rather them be mad or upset or frustrated than apathy. Because
thoroughly intelligent take right
there. No
like
sports franchise wants apathy. Because you're
First of all,
screwed.
I think you meant to say college, but yes, sports franchise, correct. Also, by the way, this day and age, thoroughly accurate, as we've said many times, right?
I mean, that is critical, and that hurt them here down the stretch a little bit. I don't want to get into it, but the TV numbers were not good this year. There's a lot of reasons for that, but they were not good. It's going to be low. So, offensive line coach, that's to me, I'm really going to be curious your reaction, whoever they hire, what the impact there, and then that person, what kind of system they run. And that might add, depending on what it is, they may go after certain offensive linemen that fit that offensive line's coach's philosophy, right? So that's why, to me, that it starts there in the offense. I would not be surprised if they add a running back in the portal, one that has experience, because as of right now, there's not a lot of experience back with all the questions in the backfield. But of course, the quarterback position. As I've said, you hit the right quarterback, that can make a couple games difference. The fan base feels differently. But I don't know in this market if UCF will able to land a quarterback that's going to be a big name that people are going to be excited about. Doesn't mean they won't hit the right quarterback. I'm just saying, I don't know if you're going to hit like the big name that like, oh, I'm excited about that guy. It's probably going to be somebody from a lower level quarterback, mid-major, or maybe even FCS. Don't be surprised about that.
Or it's going to be a guy that asked for a butt ton of bounty, like Sorsby. I'm not saying it's going to be him, but think of him or Nico over in Tennessee before he went over to UCLA, right? There could be a world where a guy asks for entirely too much money at one program and then finds himself having to take UCF money, air quotes, to be a Knight. And then really, do you want that guy? If other people are saying no to him because his price is too high, what's his defect? There's just a lot of factors there.
Well, the other thing is maybe the staff feels like one of the freshmen could get in right away, like Marriott, who is probably the prize of this signing class.
I mean, we're talking about Marriott, but Dante Carr's in here too. Maybe he surprises people.
Right, one of the two guys, right? Because it's kind of the old Seattle Seahawks philosophy. Remember when Russell Wilson was in his rookie contract?
Russell Carrington Wilson overcoming Matt Flynn and Tavares Jackson.
Right.
What a drop. 2012, Eric Lopez.
Well, that's to me. I mean, like I said, college football is more and more like the NFL model system now. The beauty of having a freshman quarterback is you don't pay him as much, so it allows you to spend elsewhere. That's kind of what made the Seahawks successful in a lot of ways during that Super Bowl run where they should have won 2 Super Bowls, settled for 1, but got to 2 Super Bowls. But that was the motto. And maybe if one of the, depending on who the UCF ends up with at quarterback, either way, I could see an open competition at quarterback come spring and into the fall. Don't you, Kyle?
Yeah, no, I think that's true. I think that's true for the foreseeable future, regardless of who the head coach is, for sure.
Any other things we need to hit on UCF football that we have not hit, or do you think we've covered everything here? I just want to make sure, because anything you want to add?
I like a lot about what you said with the offensive line. My hope is, if you're asking me who I would target, somebody who's going to be completely underappreciated and disrespected would be anybody on Mario Cristobal's staff in Miami, because they've had a butt ton of talented O-line classes come through there, and nobody's talking about it. And
it's why Miami currently is the best program in the state. They've had back-to-back 10-win seasons because, and Nick Saban has said this because Mario Cristobal was on his staff at one point at Alabama, but Nick Saban has publicly said that there is not a better evaluator of line talent in the high school ranks or in the portal than Mario Cristobal. That is why Miami, poke all the fun you want about how, and they certainly have flaws, and he certainly has his flaws as a head coach, but as a recruiter and evaluator, there are not many, if any, that is a better evaluator in the line play than Mario Cristobal. And that is why Miami is somewhat relevant and in the mix to the playoff, which is a great segue, Kyle. I don't know if you did that on purpose or not. because I wanted to ask you real quick, because you and I have strong opinions on the playoff. We are both been on record saying we don't necessarily like the 12-team playoff. We liked it at 8. It's not going to happen, so we're not going to spill milk over it. It is what it is.
Indeed.
I know you're not a fan of some of the process behind it. Where this impacts, of course, is the Big 12. The Big 12 title game. Texas Tech, BYU in a rematch. Texas Tech beat the crap out of BYU in Lubbock in the regular season. Really, the score was misleading. Texas Tech settled for a lot of field goals. Could have been a lot worse. Depending on that result, will have an impact on the playoff. If Texas Tech beats BYU, the Big 12 is going to be a one-bid league. BYU is going to be out. Sorry, cookie guy who paid Sataki a lot of money this week. That's just the way the cookie crumbles. Get over it. Thank you. I you've influenced me here. But if BYU were to upset Texas Tech, and trust me, it's an upset. They're about a 13.5-point underdog in this game. Then the Big 12 will likely get 2 bids, because I don't see where Texas Tech would fall from the 4, which is where they're ranked right now. They're ranked 4 in the college football rankings, to out completely. I find it's unlikely. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it is.
Remember, Eric Lopez, in the very same Big 12 we mentioned, there was a school that garnered a lot of negative press and PR when they started utilizing a fiscal approach. Remember a number of years back when TCU hired a big marketing firm to make a bunch of noise to get them involved in the hunt for the back then 4-team playoff, right?
Correct, yeah.
I think, and granted, obviously not a perfect comparison. Let me lead with that. But Eric, I don't see, I feel like how Texas Tech is perceived with all the spending they've made and being accused of doing something wrong when they're really just using a method that is now legal and that Notre Dame has gotten away with for years. What?
Among other schools, let's be real.
Correct.
No, that's not all of them.
But I think it negatively mentally impacts the committee in Texas Tech.
Well, that's why I said anything's possible. If you're Texas Tech, take care of business. Please, don't let it get into the hands of the committee. Win, because here's the thing. If you beat BYU, and you should, you're the better team. You have more athletes than BYU. They gave Bachmeier tons of problems. They were the one team that gave BYU's offensive line lots of problems. And they shut down L.J. Martin, the running back. For BYU to have a chance in this game, L.J. Martin has to be the best player in the field, which means they have to control the Texas Tech defensive line, which is easier said than done. That's a $7 million
of which Lee Hunter is a piece. Not simple, guys.
I believe he's all. Yeah, did he make all conference? I think I don't know.
He was honorable. No, he did make all conference. I believe. I got to look. I forget.
Good player. I guess. And then BYU's got to play good red zone defense like they did the first time there. But if you're Texas Tech, if you win this game, odds are you're going to get a bye into the quarterfinals. And I think this team is good enough to make a deep playoff run, which if you're Brett Yormark, you're excited about that. I know some people are criticizing him because he's not fighting for BYU or campaigning. That's not Brett Yormark's style. He's a pretty straight shooter. I don't think he's just going to campaign for BYU just because they're the Big 12. I think he'll campaign more about Texas Tech and its seeding. I think he realizes the monopoly, the system, the way it's played. And I don't blame him because I don't think BYU is one of the 10 or 12 best teams in the country. I don't. They got a chance to prove it, though, to get in if they win the upset here. What do you think happens in the Big 12 title game?
I'm with you. I think from the Big 12 perspective, Eric, a close game regardless is the thing that the Big 12 needs the most, right?
Sure.
To your point, an argument can be made that a BYU victory is better for the Big 12 because the teams have a better shot of making it.
Because you get 2 bids. You would get 2 bids because I think what would happen is Texas Tech would stay in. I don't know if they would get a home game. I don't think either team would get a home game in the first round.
We need to slow down and mention a few other assumptions that are being made in what you're saying. For one, You're assuming that Georgia beats Alabama, makes them a 3-loss team, and knocks them out of the playoff. Right? Let's say that.
No, I don't even know if that would be if BYU were to beat Texas Tech. I think Texas Tech would take either Miami or Notre Dame spot, whichever one ends up getting it.
That's my point. If Alabama gets that 3rd loss, then it's more about those 2 teams.
Yeah.
And Alabama can't really screw it up as much, is what I'm saying.
Gotcha.
And to your point, Miami's campaign is a straw man and frivolous. It doesn't. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
No.
I agree. Like, why is the media like forgetting? Everybody just forgets they lost to 2-4 loss teams. One of them at home, like a mediocre Louisville team and a mediocre SMU team who couldn't even beat Cal to get to the ACC title game. I have no sympathy for Miami.
Yeah, you're making the same mistake that a lot of other people do. It's not as much about Miami's unranked loss. So again, legitimate point you make, Eric Lopez. What I'm saying is Miami barely beat Notre Dame in the first place in week 1
with a quarterback that was making his first start in CJ Carr. Yeah.
And then the next week, all undefeated until most recently, Texas A&M only beat them by a single point.
Right. I think that's why the committee's
not talking enough about that.
I think the committee agrees with you. That's why the committee's had Notre Dame ranked ahead of Miami all this time, even though I have a suspicion that I think they're going to flip it because for a lot of reasons. But
and let's put it this way. If Notre Dame were playing in the ACC, they'd be in their title game.
Agreed. Agreed. And they see media people that have been crying and whining. And like you ask them, who would you pick if they played again? They were like, Notre Dame. I would have Notre Dame over Miami. I'm not going to lose sleep over Notre Dame, though, because their schedule's not great either.
It hasn't been historically.
So let me ask you this. So I think we both agree. We both have Texas Tech winning.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a one-bid Big 12 at that point.
Right. Correct.
In your world, who are you putting in the playoff? Who are you putting in?
I mean, are we talking like all 12? What do you?
Yeah, here, I'll run through the teams. You tell me, you're good with it, or you're like, I have a problem with it, but it's gonna whatever. Like Ohio State's gonna be in, right? Lock.
Sure. Right.
Indiana's a lock.
They are, but they're overrated and will be eliminated.
Agreed, 100%. But I wish they get away with playing nobody. Most of the Big Ten teams do. Ohio State, it's not like Ohio State's lit in the world on fire in scheduling. Granted, they play Texas, so that's a good positive. Oregon's going to be in, even though they haven't beaten anybody. Their best win is like USC.
They're a bigger crime than Indiana.
Agreed, 100%. But they're going to get in. I mean, that just is. You look at, they're not going to keep them out. Ole Miss is going to be in,
and they should.
Okay.
We'll see what the coaching impact is, but they should. Yes.
Texas A&M is going to be in.
Right.
Oklahoma is going to be in.
That's weird. I don't know what to make of that.
They won at Alabama, won at Tennessee, beat Michigan. They have the resume.
Yeah,
you're right. Be in.
You're right. Yeah, you convinced me.
They're at number 8 right now. I don't see them dropping. So as far as out completely is my point. I think I've hit I think I hit all the top 8 teams there. So there's 2 spots left. Who would you pick for those 2 spots? Alabama, Miami, Notre Dame, or other? Is there a team outside of that you would pick?
I mean, I want to see Vandy, but I don't think that's happening.
Yeah, I agree with that.
That would be fun. But yeah, for me at that point, I would want to see, because there's 2 teams left. And one of them, by the way, like you're also accounting for the G5 team. I think the winner of the American is that team, right? Like,
yeah, sure, whatever. Yeah, whatever.
We're clear about that.
Yeah.
So, you know,
I don't give a. I could give 2 bleeps there. Like, you know what that is? That means the 5 seed's getting a bye and gets whoever's the American. And my goodness, if it's Duke, Virginia, or James Madison, whoever draws them is going to get a bye. So I think we could have 6 teams get a bye in this stupid system. But hey,
well, you say that, but if it's Duke or Virginia, there's an opportunity for the American to make noise in a way that they hadn't lately. I'm just saying, because that ACC.
But remember, I think the American and the ACC/JMU will be the 11 and 12 seeds. So they're going to draw. Right. They're going to have to go on the road against the 5 seed and the 6 seed, which will likely be in some combination. They got to go to Eugene and Oregon, or they got to go to maybe Athens if Georgia loses, or maybe they got to go to A&M. Like, they're not going to win those.
There's a high likelihood they get an SEC team. I agree. Let me dream of that ACC.
Fair. Fair. But of the last 2 at larges, who would you pick? Because if Alabama loses, I'm going under the assumption Alabama. Are you one that believes Alabama should be out if they lose in the SEC title game, or the fact they made the SEC title game should give them protection?
No. If Alabama loses, the reason they don't get in is none of those. It's Texas. If Texas had not beaten undefeated Texas A&M to stop them from being undefeated, Alabama might have had a fighting chance. But at this point, You're asking me then to put Alabama ahead of a team that beat the undefeated Texas A&M.
So you would put Texas. So you disagree. That's where you're disagreeing with the committee. You think Texas should be ranked higher and should be right
with
there.
With a third loss, that's the case. Remember, the reason why Alabama's currently ahead is they only have.
Would you put Texas over Miami and Notre Dame?
And that's I would put Texas over Miami. Yes.
What about Notre Dame?
I'm going to say no.
Okay.
Because at least in Miami, like that single win difference matters to me with the Texas comparison, and they gave Texas A&M that same trouble that they gave Texas A&M that same trouble that Texas did. That's what I meant to say, right? So they won more games and nearly won against A&M, right? It's that quality loss argument we keep hearing about, right, Lopez?
Yeah. We'll see what happens. I've been on record since October. I think the SEC was going to get 5 after
we were there together, my friend. You act like you were alone in this vessel.
I know. They're going to get 5. I think even if Alabama loses, I think they're going to get in just because they're going to be protected by the SEC title game. Hey, you can't punish a team for playing, which I understand. You're going to punish a team that played an extra game, but not punish the team that's sitting at home, basically, is the argument they're going to use. Unless
Notre Dame
Alabama better show up. Don't lose like 50-0, because that could backfire. But I think Alabama, I think 5 from the SEC get in. I still think the ACC is going to get in one way or the other. Either Virginia gets in and wins it, or if Duke wins and they go with JMU or whatever, I think Miami jumps Notre Dame. I think that's what they're going to do anyway. I think they're going to jump Miami. I think they're going to cave to the pressure, and they're going to put Miami in. I think the ACC will get repped one way or the other.
Are you implying Miami's a better brand than Notre Dame? You're going against one of your
not a bad brand. It's not a bad brand. They're pretty good brand.
I didn't say that. I asked you if you thought the Miami brand was bigger than Notre Dame.
I think ideally, if it was up to TV, they'd like to get both of them and kick out the Big 12. If it was up to TV.
Which is what we've intimated might happen when BYU loses.
That's why I'm saying, well, BYU I think will be out if they lose. And I think if Texas Tech, that's why I don't think Texas Tech's necessarily a lock if they lose. I think they'll get in, but it's not a lock. I mean, my goodness, anything's possible. All right, we've gone long on this. I just wanted your thoughts on the playoff because we've talked playoffs for years, so I was curious. I've not heard your official thoughts on the playoff until now, so at least now I feel better. I can sleep better now. Quick word, hoops plays Towson. Don't sleep on that game Sunday, folks. They're a top 15 mid-major team. That's a team that is favored to win the CAA. They can win the league. UCF coming off a win against VMI, 6-1. So far, so good for Johnny's club here, Kyle. Still some questions, but it's a team that's passing the basketball, averaging nearly 19 assists per game as a team. Stillwell is a stud. I think you would love seeing him play up front. They're in the mid-50s in the net rankings, which is good. The only negative is that's only the 11th best in the Big 12. That tells you all you need to know about basketball. You're in a stacked league, but so far so good for Johnny so far.
Yeah, only the NBA is better, right? That's what they keep saying. And
that's what Brett Yormark said, yeah.
All right. I love that you come in here with the assists because that's the correct thing to point out for a program that's responding to being led by either a star or 1 or 2 players or a leadership guy like Darius Johnson. And that any of that basically having gone away outright, and the assist number being that, hey, we're forming a new team and we're going to try to have that more team concept. We don't necessarily have an identity. That's exactly what you want to see, and they're doing it 100%. Can they keep up the shooting? I don't know. We'll find out.
That's a big question. No, you're absolutely 100% right on that. All right, that'll do it. Keep up with all the UCF sports here on blackandgoldbanneret.com, on social media and everything as well. It should be a lot of fun. Of course, football will obviously have the transfer tracker as updates go. That roster, who knows? By the time you're listening to this, more moves might be made on the roster. It's good, or reported anyway. That's how fast this sucker is going to be. Kyle, it's always a pleasure. Good catching up with you, sir.
Honor, joy, and privilege, Eric Lopez. Glad to do it again with you. But until next time, everyone, class dismissed.
Until next time, this has been Night Shift.